There you go. Bonjour tout le monde, salam alaikum. Hello, it's good to be here. So good morning, and I'd like to thank you all for being here today. My name is Stephen Brown. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at the National Council of Canadian Muslims. Along with the Palestinian leaders, I'm proud to present the first model legislation in Canadian history that charts our own course as a nation on Palestinian human rights. We've called this legislation the Nakba Bill, or an act for Canada to stand for human rights and peace in the Middle East. As many Canadians may or may not know, May 15th is a day marked by millions of Palestinian people around the world to mark one of the most tragic events in modern history. I'm talking about the Great Catastrophe, or the Nakba, that took place decades ago when over 700,000 Palestinians were driven from their homes in Palestine in May 1948. But of course, as we stand here now, the Palestinians of the Gaza Strip are enduring what can only be seen as a second Nakba. Both Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the US President Donald Trump have openly spoken about plans to ethnically cleanse Gaza of 2.5 million Palestinians ahead of annexing the area. And they aren't just talking about it, they're actively mobilizing, clearing land, and doing exactly what they are promising to do. This is a government that described the people of Gaza as human animals, is using starvation as a weapon of war, and is facing charges of genocide at the International Court of Justice. I want to say a word about just how important it is for Canada to chart its own course here. As of right now, we Canadians know what it feels like to be facing threats from an aggressive neighbor that is actively attacking our sovereignty with threats of annexation. The Trump administration that began with a policy of using pressure tactics to try to break us and to annex us. Massive tariffs have been applied to make the lives of Canadians harder, to make our families suffer, and to make our workers uncertain about the future. This is the same government led by US President Donald Trump that's teamed up with the Netanyahu government of Israel to pressure the Palestinians into giving up their sovereignty in Gaza, the inhabitants of which have experienced mass killings and even greater displacement. What is happening right now in Gaza is one of the great moral issues of our time, if not the greatest. This doesn't bode well for us as Canadians. Living in a world where some countries can use pressure tactics to force other countries to give up their sovereignty is an intolerable threat to our national security. Because this is exactly what the Trump administration is currently doing to us. As it stands, Donald Trump has threatened Canada, Greenland, and Gaza with annexation. It's an unprecedented situation, and quite frankly, we're at a crossroads. As Canadians, we must grasp a hold of this moment as an opportunity to chart our own course, to stand up for human rights, and to live up to our commitments. We must set our priorities first. We must put our vision first. This is why, as a Canadian, I'm proud to be standing here today to present the Act for Canada to Stand for Human Rights and Peace in the Middle East, also known as the Nakba Bill. This model piece of legislation charts a path for Canada to assert a Canadian vision of international relations, of respect for national sovereignty, international law, and human rights, and it rejects the Trump version and the Netanyahu vision of international relations, of might makes right. In all things foreign and domestic, Canadian interest must come first. So today, as those in Gaza are facing what can only be described as a second Nakba, Canada has the chance to stand against this reality, both for Palestinians and for us. We have a chance to stand on the right side of history, no matter what Trump or Netanyahu want to do. Just yesterday, the foreign minister of our country rightly and correctly said that Israel is using food as a weapon of war. So we don't have any time to waste. Now is the time to take action so that our words match our actions. So let me give a brief overview of the Nakba Bill. The Act asks for, among other items, the following changes in our relationship with Palestinian human rights. First, that Canada mark the 15th of May as the annual Nakba Day. That Canada recognizes Palestinian statehood, as numerous experts asked Canada to do at the Foreign Affairs Committee during their study last year. That Canada expands its one-way weapons embargo against Israel to include transparency measures that identifies all weapons exports and removes any loopholes. That Canada bans IDF recruitment on its soil. That Canada recognizes the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court, including in its advisory opinion. That Canada bans all imports generated from illegal settlements under international law. That Canada applies sanctions against leaders currently wanted by the ICC on accusation of war crimes against humanity, as well as Israeli leaders sitting in the Netanyahu's war cabinet. that Canada builds and adopts a definition of anti-Palestinian racism at the federal level, and that Canada reforms the Special Measures Program to allow Palestinians in Gaza to more easily reunite with their loved ones here in Canada, who are currently having to watch the death of their relatives live-streamed. None of these items are at all outside the boundaries of common sense or the commitments that we have made as Canadians to uphold international law and human rights. This is our responsibility. At a time when our leaders are working to protect Canadian sovereignty in the face of annexation threats, we of all people should be able to empathize with the existential threat facing the people of Gaza. We of all people should be helping them to uphold their dignity and self-determination. This is the time to stand for the right to sovereignty, both at home and abroad. And so I'm proud to be standing here with my community partners to represent the first step in this journey of the Nakba Bill, the totality of which can be read at nccm.ca/NakbaBill/. We'll be encouraging all parliamentarians this session to adopt the bill, table it, and pass it. And we're already in productive conversations with parliamentarians about the model legislation and are optimistic that we can work constructively at a real policy solution to stand up against the threats of U.S. annexation, both here at home and abroad. I'll now pass it on to my friend and partner, Dr. Abu Qasim, Mohammed Abu Qasim.
Good morning. My name is Mohammed Abu Qasim. I'm a first-generation Canadian, first-generation Canadian Palestinian from Gaza. 77 years ago, more than 750,000 Palestinians were forcibly expelled from the land in Palestine, and the thousands were killed. 77 years later, a second Nakba is taking place in Gaza right now. I remember a time, a month ago, where I would speak with our political leaders here at home, and I would have to convince them that the Netanyahu government is not interested in peace, but rather their larger goal is to continue their illegal occupation of Palestinian land and fully annex Gaza. Now it is a common knowledge. Why? Because Netanyahu and his ministers talk about wanting to expel every Palestinian from Gaza and working towards the goal every single day. So as a Palestinian and as a Canadian, it was not a surprise to me at all that President Trump would use similar language and make similar threats of wanting to annex Canada as their 51st state. As a Palestinian and a Canadian, both of my countries face threat of annexation. But let me be very clear. The situation in Gaza, the threat that the Palestinians are facing in Gaza, the indiscriminate bombing, the forced displacement, starvation, and what the International Court of Justice has called a plausible genocide taking place there is not comparable to what we as Canadians are facing from Trump. The principle is the same. The principle that we are seeing from the Israeli government is the same, the principle that guides Trump's policy, which is might is right. Because they have strong guns and bigger bombs, they do not believe they will be held accountable under international law, and that is what this threat means. The international rules-based order. You don't have to believe me. Just listen to what Netanyahu and his ministers have said about wiping Gaza off the map or expelling over 2 million Palestinians from Gaza into the Sinai Desert. We stand across a crossroad right now as a country that is signatory to the international rules-based order that we helped establish. We fought to establish this international rules-based order with the determination that we will never allow international law to be threatened by a government ever again. That Canada, that we know, uphold the ruling of international law, the sanctity of current global system we help build to prevent what is actively taking place in Gaza right now. The bill is about upholding international law, about doing our duty as a sovereign nation to help other countries realize and defend their own sovereignty and right to self-determination. Because while the suffering of the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank is not comparable to the threat that Canadians are facing today, there may become a time where we look at the international community for support in our most dire hour. Today, I speak to you as a Canadian, as a business owner, as a father and a husband, as a neighbor, as someone who does not want to see the country I live in harm in any shape. This bill is about righting the wrong of the past and the present. On the day of May 17, in the day of May 15th, 77 years ago, after the Nakba, I must remind you that history is repeating itself. I have seen my family be killed in Gaza, the families of my friend, all because they are Palestinian, because the Netanyahu government believe that it cannot be held responsible. What we have seen from President Trump is the same way of thinking. He believes he won't be held responsible should he choose threaten our sovereignty, and we must stand again for both. Thank you so much.
Autre question?
Any question you want to add something?
That's right, thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you.